Node.js. सब फ्रंट एंड में हो गया है। HTML CSS हो गया, Git हो गया, Bootstrap हो गया,
Yeah.
Nextcloud
Good morning, everyone. So yesterday we learned about few
Node.js Express
form-related
parameter framework में
concepts like
database
how we design a form and how do we validate the form.
इतना सीख जाऊंगा, बहुत सीख जाऊंगा।
So yesterday we discussed about how to implement a third-party form library, how we can manage a third-party form library, and we were using Formic. In Formic, we saw how to design a basic form. And what is the advantage of Formic? It reduces the lot of event handling we have to do for two-way binding. Generally, to collect data from every element, we have to write event for every element manually, collect the data and store in some state and use it. But what Formic can do, it have inbuilt functions. These inbuilt functions allow us just to configure the functions. They will take care about accessing the data and submitting the data. Already events, functions, all are configured here. But Formic, in concept of handling validation, it again doesn't have good features for validating the form. You have to follow all traditional JavaScript techniques for validation. So what is solution is, we learned about another third party. What is it for handling validations? Another is Yup. So Yup library. Let's see how this works. What is this Yup library? So this is not for designing form. This is for validating the form. Right? So official, you can see this is the official website. Means officially npmjs.com, and we are looking for Yup, and this is the Yup library we have, and you can see what this library says is, so it is a schema builder. Yup is a schema builder. So it is not a library for designing the form. It is a schema builder. What is meant by schema builder? That means it is used as a structure builder. That means it builds the structure. What is the structure? Structure of what is data structure? Data structure is all about what type of value you can store, what range of value you can store. You learn data type. What is data type? Data type defines the data structure. So it specifies what type of data you can store, how much you can store. So it is a structure builder. So it is not a form builder. It is not for form. It provides several built-in services. Those services you can inject and you can use for validation. it have both for data types, and it have other uh, validation related methods. We will see how this works, how we can manage. So actually, people who ask for these validations in interviews, they ask like, have you used any asynchronous validations? Asynchronous validation is nothing but if you are handling validation in a React using any schema builders, then it is by default asynchronous. By default, they are asynchronous. In the many React interviews, you will find this question like, what are asynchronous validations? So asynchronous validate means whatever validations you write, they are synchronous. Whatever validations you use, they are asynchronous from a library. Actually, you can also write your own asynchronous validation. I will show you later, because for that you need to use async, await, and promises like concepts, and you have to build your own promises. Then you can create your own asynchronous functions, right? So what is this yup? So what is the concept of yup? So it is a schema builder. It is a schema builder. So it defines the data structure for every field in a form. So data structure specifies the type of data and behavior of data. So it also restricts data. It also restricts data. So it is asynchronous in operations, and it provides various validation services. It provides various validation services. So to validate input value. So the validation services like we have required, we have like min, like max, like string, like number, like email. So you have like matches. All these are different types of services. It provides various validation services to validate input value. What is the point here is you can import and use only what you need actually, or you can import all of them and implement. So to use this library, so it is not a form library, it is a form validation library, right? So it is not a form builder. It just validates the form. It is not a form builder, it just validates the form. So how we can implement this? So how to manage this is syntactically. First step, you have to install yup library. This you can do by using npm install yup and save. After installing, if you want to use it, you can import specific services. Only what services you want you can import. So, or all services. You can import specific services, all services. That depends on what you want to use. Actually, you have like import. You can import like required, like min and max as yup from yup. This is how you can import any specific. So you can import only these if you want. That means you can import required, min, max. That means only these three are imported. That's what we discussed in the beginning, that React supports modular approach. That means you can just use only what you need from that situation, for that particular situation. And see, what does this means? These three are imported and they are referred using yup. They are imported and accessed as what? Yup. They are imported from it. Suppose if you want to import all of them, all services, then import asterisk as yup from yup. That is nothing but import all the services it is having. So you know import method. You can import any specific function if you want, or you just put asterisk, it will import all functions. Asterisk refers to all functions present in that particular library. All functions you can import using this. So we can import specific service or we can import all the service. Okay. Next, after importing, how to use it, how we can access and use it. So, yup, yup uses object method, object method, which is used to create. It uses an object method. This object method is used to create the schema. It is used to create the schema. So this object method is responsible for creating the schema. So the schema is created by using the yup object. How schema is created? So yup dot object, and it have the schema structure. You have field name, and in this you have yup dot, and you can access and use all the services. You can import service 1, you can import service 2, all the services you can configure for that field. Services are nothing but like minimum, maximum, required, all these. So what is the issue everywhere is these services cannot be used for certain type of elements. Then for those elements we have to manually again write. We have to manually again write. That means actually these all services map to HTML validations. In HTML there is required, so this will map to that required. In HTML there is min length, it will map to that min length. So we have matches means it will map to pattern. So then what is issue is then how you will write required for a drop down, how you will write required for a checkbox, or how you will write for any radios. There is no way. Even you don't have services for them, because these all services are designed to interact with the HTML services we are having in HTML5. Because you know HTML5 introduced a lot of validation services inbuilt. So what are the validation services of HTML5? So here a note is, so yep maps the methods to HTML validation attributes. And what are the HTML validation attributes? You know, you have required, you have min length, so we have like pattern, you have email, you have URL. So these are all the validation patterns actually. So that is the reason this is not enough for every situation. So you need a combination of both. And how you have to apply this? So the point is, yep schema is configured to form is configured with form container using formic validation schema attribute by using that property we do. Yup schema is configured with form container using formic validation schema properties. So that means in formic you have validation and validation schema. So validation is expecting a function which we written yesterday, and validation schema is this library like yep, you can use the validation schema. So let's see here how to use it. So yesterday we designed this form. So we created this form. Suppose in this we want to set the validation. Like we want a validation for name. Currently there is no validation. We want to set a validation for the form. Like name is required. Name min length is something. In that case, how do we write the validation here is, this time it will be more easier than yesterday. Yesterday we have to write a function. That function returns errors. In that everything you have to manually do. Now you have to first import. We already installed yup. You have to import asterisk as yup from yup. So from this you have to import everything. Now we need to validate these initial values. To validate the initial values, we need a validation schema. Validation schema. This validation schema actually it uses yup object. By using yup object, we build the schema. Yup object comprises of a schema structure. In this structure, you will have field name, and what is the data structure of this name. So yup dot, its data type is string. So actually in earlier versions of this yup library, data type is not mandatory. It automatic, because JavaScript is implicitly typed, implicitly typed means the data type of any reference is determined according to the value assigned. That means if you assigned or initialized a value, based on that it will determine the data type, because JavaScript is not a strongly typed language, we know that. But now recently from the latest version, yup have made the configuration of type mandatory for fields, because now all the libraries used for React, including React, is built using TypeScript. Including React is built with the TypeScript. That means they are building React.js using TypeScript language. You are using React with JavaScript for your projects, but the library of React is built in TypeScript. For example, you are using, let's say, any React function. What are the React functions we are having? Suppose we have a function like use effect. Use effect is a React related one function, hook. Now this one, I right click on it, go to definition. That means you can go to the definition and see how it is built. So when I go to definition, this is a function and it is a TypeScript file .ts. That means it is built in TypeScript. Its complete functionality is designed in TypeScript. So, and later you will learn TypeScript. We will discuss that. And important is TypeScript is strongly typed. So that is the reason now majority of the libraries, when you are using, if they are built using this TypeScript, they specify the data type. It is mandatory for TypeScript because TypeScript is strongly typed. Earlier, React people used to have another library called properties library. We have to import that properties library. Through that properties library, we have to restrict data type. But you don't need that now. You can directly do that by using this. So that means now what is this yup? It is a schema builder which tells that the name data type must be string. Earlier, we don't need to mention this. Directly, we can tell what validation it should handle. So required or min length or anything. But now they made it mandatory to mention the type. So first type, then you define other validations. So string, after that, next, what else you want to handle here? I want it as required. Required is a function. And what is important is this function is built in such a way that if you don't mention what message to show, it have a message to show. That means already in HTML, you put just required. Then you don't tell what message to display. It will show some message. It says that please fill the field. Automatically message will come. That means these services have built-in messages. If you don't give any message, they have those messages to show. That means it will show its own message. You can override the message. You can put your own message by keeping the message into this name required like this. Otherwise, no problem. It have its own message. So similarly, now you can add more services. We have like min. What is this min? Min is expecting a number. Number is 4. If it is not, then name to short. So that is the message we are displaying. Just we are adding one option for that. Similarly, next we have price. What is the price? Yep, it is a number. And what is it? So it is also required. So price required. Like this we are defining. If you have a range for price, you can mention the range for price, like what min is how much, suppose 1000. So here we put a message price minimum 1000 required. If there is a max, then we put max as 10,000. So then we will put a message saying that price can be max 10,000 only. These are all the options you can add. For example, suppose here we are defining some fields, right? So you are configuring this. This is enough because you cannot give required for this city and stock. Again, what you have to do, like yesterday, you have to write a validation and you have to attach that validation by using another option. What is it? Validate. That means it can use both validation schema, validate. If validation schema is there, why validate is given? That means everything is not possible by using schemas. Then we have to manually write. This many times people ask, do you know custom validation? It is not a special concept. If you write validation manually by yourself, that is custom. That's nothing any special concept, right? So here we have defined this. Okay. Now you see how it works. Now the validation schema is defined. I click on submit. Then you see same working fine. And I entered here the name. So then it says name to short. So, and now it is fine. Suppose I am entering a string. It says it must be a number. And I haven't given any message. I just mentioned number, right? I haven't given any message. That means these services have some built-in messages. You can override them. You can put your own messages. You can put your own message. So here I'm entering a number. So now when I'm entering a number, say price minimum this, and I entered like 2000, now fine. If say 20,000 can be maximum 10,000 now. That means it is handling all the validation. All the validation. Okay, so you removed here. Now it says required. Everything working fine. Let's see here. I click inside the field without typing. I click outside. Again, it is working fine. That means it is handling blur. But it is not handling only this field again. It is handling all. That means it is verifying all the fields in the form at a time. So that means Still, this is not completed. Why this is not finished? Because it is not verifying individual form element. It is verifying all simultaneously at the same time. That you will see the solutions will be coming, right? So what is advantage of schema? It will reduce all the complex logic you need to write, right? And important here is, you see now how to display the errors. Automatically Formic have an errors object which will catch the errors returned by schema. Yesterday we have used this. What is this? It is a Formic property which collects the validation errors. Not just only validation errors, validation schema errors also. Errors object can collect both schema as well as validation. It can manage both of them. So for example, so here you need to know how we can configure it. That means syntactically you have to write like this. We have Formic constant. So we have Formic is equal to use Formic. In that use Formic, you need initial values, and you need validation schema. Here you need to use an yup object that builds the schema. That's what you have to define. So field and yup dot service, what service you want to use. Now how to access the Formic can return all schema errors using Formic dot errors property. It can return all the schema errors by using Formic dot errors property. So you can simply report any error if you want. So by using these options. So we have Formic dot errors dot field name. So the validation schema. Now the question here is this have anything to do with the form? It has nothing to do with the form. It is related to only building a validation schema. It will not control your form, right? It is not going to control your form. It is just about the building the schema for your form. So technically, now what we have done, we have defined these functions. For example, I will add one more. Suppose I will remove this and I will keep the form with suppose I have yeah, we have another one like so vendor contact. So like this we have vendor contact. Vendor contact is a string. Vendor is nothing but the supplier here. So data term here I say vendor contract contact. So and here we have input type. So just this is an input type. It is text. Okay, and here we need to manage what to manage on change. Which one you write? Only that one will work, right? Formic dot handle change. We are using handle change. So this is blur. As I told you, we have to manually write the blur if you are there in yesterday class, right? What is blur? If we don't write a blur, what will happen? Already we discussed that, right? So here we are using this on change. Let's put here a field. Have it should need a name. So the name is vendor contact. Okay, vendor contact is the name, and here we define some like vendor contact. So it is yup, it is a string, and it requires some validation patterns. Is a function which expects a regular expression, and in JavaScript you know how regular expressions are written. How regular expressions are written? Into slash. Here slash plus 91 slash d and 10 digits. And if not, we will put a message invalid mobile, invalid contact. So plus 91 plus 91 10 digits, 10 digits required. That's just we are giving that option there, and you can just put required also. That means this indicates that mobile required. That's how we are configuring. Now what happens here is you define this. Now you click on this, and you are not entering the details. It is not verifying. You already learned. Why it will verify? It will not verify. No? Yesterday, that is what the point we discussed. When it will verify, we have to write on blur. On submit, it will show this. And important now, when you are defining this name, so that is fine. When you are defining the price, that is fine. And this is maximum this. And the contact here, we have to display the message, but we are not showing any message for that. The message must be displayed below. In data definition, class name is what? Text danger. So formic dot errors, this is related to vendor contact. That's the error we are showing. That is mobile required, and we said some 8 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 digits, and you have plus 91. Now it's fine. So we are verifying, and if it is not valid, you submit. It's not submitting. And if it is valid and submit, it is submitting. Now you solved yesterday's problem. Yesterday it was unable to submit because it is just incomplete, not finished with the complete service, right? So that means gradually you will see so many things which will finally take to the concept side. Okay, this is better. All these are level by level, different kind of scenarios, right? Now the question is how you will validate any field. So when it is touched and it is not entered, right? How you will verify that? To handle such scenarios, what we have to do? We have to write other events. What are those events? Handle blur, handle change. We need to configure them, right? So this is first thing we have defined this and we are working this. Let me give you this example. This is an example for yep. So formic demo. Yeah, this is formic demo dot JS. Let me copy this example for you. This is the example formic demo. Okay. Now in this here, what is the issue is I want to verify on change. I want to verify on blur. Then we have to write everything on change, handle change, on blur, handle blur. They have provided another solution for this. They have provided another solution for this. What Formic has done is, Formic have another solution. So the Formic solution is nothing but here Formic provides a spread syntax, a spread approach for configuring all events for element. So Formic provides a spread approach for configuring all events for element. Actually, every event we have to manually write. Every event we need to manually write. Manually, we need to configure every event. On change, what should happen? On blur, what should happen? Everything we need to write. You know what is a spread operator. Already you learned in JavaScript, rest and spread. In React interviews, these all question also very common. In many React interviews, they ask what is rest operator and spread. What is difference between rest and spread? If you learn JavaScript, you know the difference, right? So rest is about formal parameters, spread is about actual parameter, right? You know the various techniques of spread, you learned in that. Here the spread approach is, suppose I am not writing on change. Suppose if I want to write blur, then what you have to do? We need to define on blur. What it has to do? Formic dot handle blur. Every event I need to configure here. Now what happens? So you click inside and click outside, it is showing all. Still it is not satisfied because it is having form state, complete all it is verifying. That means this formic is using handle blur. Handle blur for formic, not for this element. That means entire formic will fire up. That means every field will be verified. You have solutions you are going to learn. So that means now instead of writing this, if I don't write this, that means on blur and on change is not written. If on blur on change is not written, that means you click here, it's not verifying, submit, you see it is showing a message, and I am typing, it's not verifying because on change is not there. On change is not there. Now, have you observed this validation is not for this element, it is for form, because when I submitted the form, it verified all. That means it is using on submit. On submit, it is validating all the fields. And on change, on blur, you have to manually write. So without that, you see, the new approach is you can use a syntax of dynamic. Spread syntax starts with dot, dot, dot. You know spread operator, right? Here we have formic. Formic have a method called get field properties, get field props. Which field related properties? Field name. field name is name. That's how we define. What this is going to do is, this syntax, this is a spread approach. Spread means from formic, it will return all the arguments. Spread is to spread all the arguments. Na? All the arguments will spread into a single reference, right? That means one spread can spread into multiple references. You know that syntax, right? Actually, how you write the spread syntax? You have a function, some function name, A, B, C, some values are there. Into these three, you need to send some value. What you do? You have to call name. It is an dot dot dot. It is an array 10, 20, and 30. Am I right? That is the spread approach. Na? You learned in JavaScript basic. That's so. What is this spread approach? It is going to spread these values into these three. We know the spread, rest operators and all, right? These are all general JavaScript thing. Now what it will do is, it will collect all the arguments provided by Formic and it will apply to name field. That's good. That means what arguments Formic is having? So many. Formic have on change, Formic has on blur, Formic have values, everything is attached to this name. That means without individually writing, you can attach this. Then what is drawback of this? You are attaching everything even if you don't need them, right? I don't want to verify on blur. Then this is not a great idea. Why? Because this is going to attach all the arguments. So what is advantage previously? We can attach only what we need. Here everything is attached. You cannot choose. Whatever Formic is having, it will attach, right? But if you want that, then this is the best idea. That means what you can do. So Formic dot get field properties, and for which field? Price. Similarly for Formic. So here we have Formic. So get field properties, and for which for property? That is for vendor contact. Vendor contact. That is the field name. This field refers to the initial values, what you mentioned. Now I am defining them. Let's see. This time I am not writing on change and all. So I will click inside name and click outside. Same working fine. That means blur is working. I entered the details. It's also working. Right? That means I am entering the details. So that's also working. Price, that's also working. So that is fine. Everything is working. So we have plus 91 and everything is working fine. But you don't need to configure individually the events. All events can be binded to this particular field directly by using a spread approach we can do. How you can do that? That means you can define dot 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 Formic dot get field props and the field name. You have to define the field name. So what it is going to do is, it reads all Formic events and binds with the specified field. That's what it can do. It reads all Formic events and binds with the specified field. That is generally done by using Formic. So this is another example for the formic demo.jsx. So that means from yesterday to today, we are moving towards simplifying, right? That means yesterday we started with lengthy approach. Now we are making it short, simple. And finally, if anybody teaches you this directly, then you will think that, okay, this is very simple. That means React is very easy. Good. That's the idea that you will have. But you don't know that if these scenarios are not working for a element, then you have to individually write them. That's obviously these scenarios will not work for every element, then you have to manually write. So you should know both techniques, right? Both techniques you should know. So now this is another example. Let me copy this. This time I am using the field properties. There is more simplified approach provided by Formic. What is the specialty is actually Formic provides Formic provides built-in components for designing a form and its fields. Formic provides built-in components for designing a form and its fields. Built-in ready-made components are present for designing a form and its fields. Actually, formic components are configured with UI, so functionality and validation all are defined. They are configured with user interface, functionality and validation. So that means it simplifies everything now. That means by using the formic components, you can design the form in a more simple way. Actually, so the formic components are you have formic, you have form, you have field, we have error messages. These are the important formic related components. We have formic, you have form, you have field, error message. These are important. These will make your form validations more simple, more simplified, right? That means they make everything more simple now. So how these work? So how they are going to work and going to manage? Actually, here don't get confused. Now you will see form and you will see form. Both are different actually. They are not same. The first one is a HTML form. The second one is a formic form. Formic form is a specialized form provided by Formic library. Both are different, right? Both are not same. So just a capitalization matters. If you write this and try to do formic validations, then it will not work. That for that you need to do all the approach that we have done till now. That means what? Field properties, on change, all these things we need to define. Formic components means a form is designed like this. Right? Let's see what actually is. Syntactically, The formic is built like this. We have formic. It's a component actually. This component have properties called initial values. It have initial values and it is having validation and it is having validation schema and it is having on submit. So all these are, what is that curly brace? That is dynamic, not object. That is dynamic. So now inside the formic, usually you can have a form. Inside the formic, you will have a form. Inside the form, you can have a field. Field type can be text, it can be number, it can be email. You can use all the HTML types. We have a field and we have an error message. Error basis for which field name, some field reference name we have to give. So this is the component of formic. This component of formic will make the form validations more simplified, including the form design also simplified. Form design will be more simplified. That means now you are not using your traditional text boxes, check boxes and all. We are using formic fields. That means formic have its own text box, formic have its own radios, formic have its own elements. So we can use this one and we can implement. Let's see how this will make a difference. That means how it can make more simple. So let's remove this part now. Actually, I am removing this complete form design. The complete form design is removed. Okay. Your configuration of formic will not change. Here we are writing all this. But now this is managed. You remove this also. This schema is required. I will copy this so that we can use it. Okay. Or you can write again, no problem. So this is removed. Now completely removed. Now this is an empty one. Right? This is an empty one. Okay, now in this what we will do is object. Yeah. In this we will design a form by using the components provided by formic. For formic, now you have to import, one is formic component, another a form component. So form, this is related to formic only, na? Right? And you need another one, that is error message. These are the three things you need. So now let's create a form. So we will put here a simple formic. This is the component now. In this formic component, so we have to define the properties here. Initial values. What are initial values? Initial values is an object. That object contains some fields. So what are the fields? So fields is nothing but just you have to define name. Another field is price. So another field is contact. Anything? This is which contact? Vendor. Vendor contact. Okay, that's what we are defining. These are initial values. Okay, another is validation schema. Validation schema. How do you write the validation schema? You have to write the validation schema using yup dot what object. In that again the field related validation. Whatever field validations you written. That means for name, what is the name field will have? So it will have yup dot what string, and it will have yup dot what min as a required, and what it is name required, and it is min, so is for say name to short. That is the one field we are configuring, the name field we are configuring. Next field is price. This also uses yup number, and it uses like min is like 1000, so min 1000 required. Okay, then so here we have another option is max. So max is some 10,000 something, so we say max 10,000 only. So we have another field. This is vendor contact. So vendor contact, it uses an yup. So yup, so uses a string, and it uses matches. Matches uses a expression, and this expression should have slash plus 91 and slash d and 10. Okay, and you need expression with a message, so invalid mobile plus 91 10 digits. Okay, and this also requires a required as what mobile required. Okay, this is all the schema you have written. This is just formic. Formic have initial values, formic have validation schema, and formic have on submit. On submit. On submit, what it have to do? So formic handles submit, but you don't need that because we haven't declared any formic. Na? There is no formic configured. I haven't declared any formic. Then how it will submit? Let's see. Because that is the concept of a component. That is the concept of a component. Okay. Okay. Let's go to this formic. We are just defining the validation schema. Now here we have initial values, validation schema. Here we have form now. Inside the form, what we have to do is we have to create a just data list, data term. So field name is name, and here we need to provide a field. And the field is just field. There is a field component. And this field should work for name. It should work for name field. It should work for name field. And what is its type? The field type must be text. It should work for name. It should be text. There is no on change. There is no on blur, nothing. Now what should be the error message of it? So we put an error message, class name text danger. And for error message, we have an error message component. This error message component should work for a field called name field. That's it. Now the same I am defining. Now the same I am defining for price. This is for price. Field type is this, and it is what? Price. And this, so same, there is nothing here also, error message we have to change to price. Okay, next another field. Okay, this is what? Vendor contact, and this will be for vendor contact, and the error message is for vendor contact. Vendor contact. Now what happens here? The form requires a button, and the button is what? Submit. Submit is the button. No events, nothing, not even a form submit also written here. Now this is the formic form that we designed. And you click on the submit button, then it should show some message here. That means it is verifying that, so cannot define or null to an object, cannot convert null to an object, because on submit what functionality it has to do we haven't mentioned. On submit what is the functionality we have to do, we haven't mentioned that. And see, blur is working. I click inside and click outside, blur is working. I am typing some data, on change is working. And have you observed the interesting part is it is not validating all fields. I am clicking inside this field and I am not entering, only that will be verified. That's good. That means only that is verified. That is verified. Now if you want to write submit, then you need to write here. That means what we are doing here, we need to add another one. What it is? On submit. On submit you have to collect what? Values. We have to collect the values and you need to submit those values. So alert, I will keep here JSON dot string 5 and whatever the values collected on submit we are defining. Now here observe there is no event, nothing configured, and I just click inside and click outside name, blur is working, and it is now input level state, it is more clear. That means it is not verifying other fields until or unless you fill this, right? So now name is entered, so that's fine. And price, the same concept with the price. So you see some price is defined, and max how much? 4,000. Okay. Vendor contact, same, mobile is required, and we are entering some mobile 98765432111, something like this. And click on submit, it will submit the data. And so there is an error here, and click on submit, it's not submitting. Now you entered something and everything is valid, then it is able to submit the data. Now for React learners, in the first session of form, if anybody shows this, then they will say that React is very easy. And React is very easy, simple, right? But how you write your own validations here, if all are built in, these are not required. That means even in HTML, you have input type email. Input type email will verify email. That verifying email is just verifying at the net there or not. That's not a correct email. We don't want that. That means HTML have given lot of validations. You know that they are not satisfying according to your requirements. That means if they are okay with your requirements, you implement. Otherwise, not. So you have to manually configure and define this. So now this is the final actually. That means if I have to deal with complex forms, directly I do this. Directly I do this. I don't write all the previous things what I showed you, all the ways how you can manage a form. But which one you will implement, that depends on your requirement and the situation. Means now you may ask like, can I write events for these elements? You can write. You can write on key up, on key down like events, but not required because already they are configured with events. You can add events, that doesn't matter. So this is the advantage of the components of forming. So that means it will simplify the design and the validation process, and it is perfect in handling all of them, right? In this again, there are so many phases again now. Actually, this is a simple example. Let's say this is another example, formic demo.what.jsx. This is input state. Actually, these components will provide a form state validation. So that means until or unless all fields are valid, I don't want this submit to work. I don't want that submit to display. That means if all fields are valid, then only this submit should work. Many registration forms, what they do, so they will not enable the submit button until or unless all fields are filled. It's waste of time because you are enabling submit button, he enter one field, again click, time waste. You disable it, enable it only when it is valid. That means you have actually you have formic provides formic provides so validation services. So at validation services which include number one, input state validation and form state validation. Input state validation and form state validation. Input state validation is verifying every field individually. Form state validation is verifying all fields in the form at a time, so that if all fields are valid, we will enable submit. So for example, you opened a edit form. When you open edit form, after editing the details, you have to save. They will not enable save button until or unless you do some editing, right? There will be a save button, but it is not enabled until or unless you do some modification. Those are form state services. Now, to create a form, to get the form state services and verify the values, you need another approach now. That means you have to learn another point to understand this. That we will see tomorrow. This is enough. First, you have to try this. If you can try this, then tomorrow we will discuss these two. That means now we are clear with two things, forms and validation. Another third party I will show. Another third party. This is one third party. What is it? Formic. There is another third party called hook form. I will show you that only introduction. You explore, because third parties, I told you, every third party is different. Several third parties companies may use. One third party, if you learned, others you need to able to explore by yourself. Just basic introduction I will show you, you can try yourself, right? Then tomorrow we will continue, right? We have session tomorrow, there is no off, right? Tomorrow is Republic Day, right? But still we have session, no problem, right? So we will continue. In tomorrow session we will discuss about that.